So you have to talk to kids with FASD at a younger level, and keeping in mind that they've probably got attention deficits, probably got memory deficits, and they will have trouble with their reasoning and thinking through. They take things black and white, and you have to just explain things simply, and you have to just not expect too much of them, and just slowly talk to them and explain everything, and then they settle and they can understand. And it's when you talk too much to a child with FASD, they get overwhelmed, and when they're overwhelmed, their emotions start to explode, and they get angry and they get irritable. Children with FASD, they're not bad at all. They're actually good kids, but they don't follow the rules. They don't get the rules. And so, for instance, things around ownership, they will even realise if your bag is in your hand that it's your bag, but if they see your bag sitting on a shelf over there and you're not directly with it, they don't get the link that that's your bag, and so they actually just take it impulsively, and they don't think through to the consequences of taking something that's not theirs. So often in teenagehood they are moving into offending. People, once they realise, oh okay, well that child's got a problem with taking things, well, we need to not leave things around them for them to take. And over time, you can teach them things and they do learn, but they might still do the wrong thing even though you've just taught them what to do. Yeah. So they do run into trouble with the law. 60% of them run into trouble with the law, and often it's quite minor things, but then they have real trouble not doing it over and over. So they don't learn from the sanctions that the court imposes, and punishment is not effective in changing a brain-based disability. They very much are only able to see from their own perspective, so they can't do that cognitive mental flexibility of stepping outside themselves and taking into account other people's points of view. So they very much are me children, not meaning to. It's part of their brain impairment. So they will literally wrangle everything to get what they want, and what looks like a selfish way. In fact, they're lovely children and they're actually caring and giving, but they do know how to systematically get what they want. And once you realise what that's about, it doesn't seem manipulative, but they are described as manipulative children. And they also lie, and that's part of their brain function as well, because they can't tell always clearly fact from fiction, so they will say anything to suit themselves, and that's because they can't see from another point of view, and it looks as if they're lying through their teeth, but they're just saying what suits them because they don't realise how that comes across. So I think the more people come to understand how their brains are working and what is the nature of that disability, the more you know what to do when that happens and how to sort of make your way around it. They didn't know how to manage Ryan. He was often getting angry and running away, and from the first time I went in there I could tell that they were pitching the work at a too high a level for Ryan, and he was doing his best but getting confused easily. We know that there's certain teaching techniques that kids with FASD, they can't learn through their mistakes, so you can't put them in a situation where they try, fail, and then you correct them and then they learn. You've actually got to use what's called error-free learning, so you've got to lead them in the right direction in a way that they're not making any mistakes and that they're doing things right first time. So I taught the school just a few teaching techniques on how to better teach students like Ryan, and also how to manage his behaviour and how to manage his emotions, because children with FASD find it very hard to regulate themselves and they get very emotionally distraught, and when they're like that you have to back off and assist them to calm down. And I think what was happening before a bit was that they would follow him and talk to him too much and expect too much of him, and he would get worse and worse and perhaps even run away, which he used to do. But now they know how to manage those little outbursts, and actually he doesn't even have those little outbursts anymore because they're preempting everything that may stress him and making sure they don't do it so that he's not getting stressed. and therefore he's staying calm. So the diagnosis for FASD, it's a medical condition, it's brain-based, and it is a medical diagnosis. It requires a neuropsychological assessment and a medical assessment, and it looks at the child's brain function on testing, whether they have attention deficits, memory deficits, executive function, which is like planning and problem solving. So their whole level of function needs to be looked at, and it's only when the child is functioning at the lowest third percentile, so that's 3 out of 100 on 3 different brain areas, that the diagnosis would ever be made. So we're not just diagnosing any child with mild problems with FASD. These are children who have got serious brain-based problems, and the medical side has to exclude all other conditions. So of course our children in care have suffered many adversities prenatally and postnatally, and in our diagnostic process we take into account everything that's happened in that child's development. So it is a thorough neurodevelopmental workup by a medical doctor and a neuropsychologist, and it's also a process of trying to, as we diagnose, start addressing the problems and start, from the day I met Ryan, I was not just assessing, I was intervening and advising on how he should be managed, and quite quickly that can make a significant change. With Ryan, we have only just recently told him he's now just had his 16th birthday, and that was because, not really that we wanted to keep it a secret, but because we wanted him to be at the right point of being able to understand it. In Canada, children get told very young, and it's like when kids are adopted, if they get told young and they grow up knowing it, then they don't ever reach a day where they have to be told. But because he had such a set of problems and his thinking was so disconnected, I didn't actually feel that he was mature enough to understand, and he is now, and he knows now that he is FASD, and that's not a reason for him to be naughty or an excuse, but it's a reason why he had these problems when he was a child, why he had trouble learning at school, why he was out of control, and it wasn't his fault, and we certainly don't blame his mum at all. But I explained to him that since we've known that he's had FASD, we've cared for him differently, and that's worked really well, and he's succeeded, and that having FASD doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed. It means that you're different to other people and you've got a set of difficulties that need to be managed, but it's not a hopeless case at all. There's lots that can be done. I think all social workers should be keeping FASD in their mind for all children, because we know that children in care are a heavily alcohol exposed group. Sometimes they come into care because their behaviour is so difficult that families can't manage. So they don't necessarily always come into care because their families are mistreating them. But families that have alcoholism rife within them are going to be at risk of having kids with fetal alcohol, and also are going to find it very difficult to raise those kids. Once you've worked with a few children with FASD, you start to see the signs of the child being immature. Many have ADHD symptoms, 70% of them. Sometimes they might have some little autistic features, they have learning problems, and most especially their moods are up and down and their behaviours poorly controlled. So you can start to see FASD. So every child warrants a proper diagnosis, but in the meantime sometimes we just suggest that if there's all those red flags, that you treat a child as if they've got FASD. So start to talk to them simply, do things very one at a time, don't expect them to be able to manage themselves, change the environment so that helps them manage themselves. And I guess social workers can take that into mind. And also I think with FASD, social workers also might start to think differently about families. Sometimes you think, oh, the child's got these problems because the family haven't managed them right, and they might want to send them off to parenting courses or whatever. But sometimes those courses are actually not suitable for a child with FASD, so they may have been trying their hardest to parent a normal child but not succeeding. And so, you know, I think that link with families is really important for social workers to start thinking, gosh, if this child's got FASD, that must have been really hard for this family to manage. And, you know, what can we do to try and strengthen that family to do that? And, you know, whenever I'm working with a child, I'm always having an aim that they will be able to be reconnected with their families. And often a FASD diagnosis can reconnect a child to a family, because then all of a sudden people can start realising what's happening.